My beloved child, come sit with me for a moment, away from the argument you keep replaying in your mind, away from the moment someone hurt you in a way you have not been able to fully release. I know what you have been afraid of, not the pain itself, though that is real enough, but the fear that if you actually forgive the person who wronged you, you will somehow be admitting that what they did was acceptable, that you are weak for letting them off the hook, that forgiveness means surrendering some part of yourself you are not willing to give up. My beloved child, I want to speak into that fear plainly today. Forgiveness will not make you weak. It is, in fact, one of the strongest things you will ever do. I want you to understand something about how the world has quietly taught you to think about forgiveness, as though it were synonymous with surrender, with losing, with allowing someone to walk away without consequence, while you are left holding the entire cost of what happened. My beloved child, this understanding of forgiveness is incomplete, and I want to offer you a truer picture. Forgiveness is not surrender to the person who hurt you. It is your own liberation from the weight their actions have placed on your heart, a weight you were never meant to carry indefinitely. I want you to consider how much strength it actually requires to release bitterness rather than nurse it. My beloved child, holding on to anger, replaying the offense, waiting for the other person to somehow pay an adequate price for what they did. These things feel powerful in the moment, but they are actually a form of continued bondage, keeping you tethered to the very person and event you wish you could move beyond. Forgiveness, by contrast, requires the far harder work of releasing that grip, choosing freedom over the false power of ongoing resentment. I also want to speak to the specific misunderstanding that forgiveness means the offense did not matter, that you are declaring the harm insignificant simply by choosing to forgive it. My beloved child, this is not what forgiveness means. You can forgive something while still recognizing its full weight, its full wrongness, its full impact on your life. Forgiveness does not require you to minimize what happened. It simply means you are choosing not to let that event continue governing your heart indefinitely. I want you to consider the story of a young man sold into slavery by his own brothers, suffering years of injustice because of their betrayal, who eventually held the power to punish them severely once circumstances placed him in a position of authority over their lives. Instead, he wept, embraced them, and told them plainly that even though they intended harm, he chose to release them from the debt their betrayal had created. My beloved child, this was not weakness. It required a strength few people ever develop, the strength to hold real power to retaliate and choose release instead. So, my beloved child, release the fear that forgiveness will make you weak. I want you to understand clearly, from the very beginning of this letter, that everything I am about to walk you through is not a call to become smaller, more passive, more willing to be hurt again. It is an invitation into one of the strongest, most freeing choices a human heart can ever make. My beloved child, I have shown you that forgiveness is strength, not weakness. And now I want to speak clearly about what forgiveness is not, because I think much of your resistance to it comes from a misunderstanding of what I am actually asking of you. My beloved child, forgiveness does not mean excusing what happened. It does not mean pretending the harm was smaller than it actually was, or explaining it away as understandable, or minimizing its impact simply because you have chosen to release the person from your own personal judgment. I want you to consider the difference between forgiving someone and excusing their behavior. My beloved child, excusing says what they did was acceptable, understandable, not really that harmful. Forgiveness says what they did was genuinely wrong, genuinely harmful, and I am choosing to release my own claim to vengeance or continued resentment anyway. These are entirely different postures, and I want you to release the fear that forgiveness requires you to adopt the former. I also want to speak to what forgiveness does not require in terms of forgetting. My beloved child, I am not asking you to erase the memory of what happened, to pretend it did not occur, or to behave as though the relationship should simply return to exactly how it was before the harm took place. Forgiveness and forgetting are not the same thing. You can forgive someone completely while still remembering clearly what happened, using that memory wisely to inform how you engage with them, or whether you engage with them at all, moving forward. I want you to understand that forgiveness also does not automatically require reconciliation. My beloved child, you can forgive someone fully in your own heart, releasing the bitterness and the desire for vengeance, while still choosing not to re-enter close relationship with them, especially if they remain unsafe, unrepentant, or unwilling to change the behavior that caused the original harm. Forgiveness is something that happens primarily within you. Reconciliation requires two willing, trustworthy parties, and it is not always wise or possible, even after genuine forgiveness has taken place. So, my beloved child, release these misunderstandings about what forgiveness requires. It does not mean excusing, forgetting, or automatically reconciling. It simply means releasing your own heart from the burden of ongoing bitterness, a release that benefits you far more than it benefits the person who caused the harm in the first place. My beloved child, I have clarified what forgiveness is not, and now I want to speak to the bitterness you have been carrying, because I know it has become familiar, almost comfortable in its own way, a companion you have grown accustomed to even as it slowly poisons other parts of your life. My beloved child, I want you to consider honestly how this bitterness has been affecting you, not simply in your relationship with the person who hurt you, but in your relationships with others, in your own peace, in your capacity to trust and to hope. I want you to notice how bitterness tends to spread beyond its original target, coloring how you interpret new situations, making you quicker to suspect betrayal in relationships that have given you no actual reason for suspicion, teaching your heart to expect harm even from people who have never hurt you the way the original offender did. My beloved child, this is one of bitterness's most insidious effects, extending far beyond the original wound to poison soil that was never actually contaminated in the first place. I also want to speak to the specific exhaustion of carrying bitterness over time. My beloved child, it requires constant maintenance, mental energy spent replaying the offense, imagining confrontations that may never happen, rehearsing arguments and justifications for why your continued anger is warranted. This maintenance is tiring, and I want you to notice how much of your emotional and mental capacity has been consumed by carrying this weight, capacity that could otherwise be spent on genuine joy, genuine connection, genuine peace. I want you to consider that bitterness often promises something it never actually delivers. Protection from being hurt again, a sense of power over the person who wronged you, some form of justice achieved through your continued resentment. My beloved child, I want you to examine honestly whether bitterness has actually delivered any of these things. Has it protected you from further pain, or has it simply added ongoing pain to the original wound? Has it achieved any actual justice, or has it simply kept you tethered to the person and event you most want to move beyond? I want you to bring this bitterness to me honestly today, not to be immediately released the moment you name it, but simply to be acknowledged, examined, and eventually, in whatever timeline this process actually requires, released into my hands rather than continuing to carry it entirely on your own. So, my beloved child, notice the bitterness you have been carrying, notice its cost, and begin, even now, considering what it might feel like to finally set it down. I am not asking you to release it instantly or without processing the genuine pain underneath it. I am simply inviting you to begin examining honestly what this bitterness has actually cost you and what freedom might feel like on the other side of finally releasing it. My beloved child, I have shown you the cost of the bitterness you have been carrying, and now I want to speak directly to the person who betrayed you, not to defend them, but to acknowledge honestly the specific pain their actions caused. My beloved child, I know exactly what happened. I know the specific words that were spoken, the specific trust that was broken, the specific expectations that were violated by someone you had every reason to believe would treat you differently. I am not asking you to minimize any of it in order to move toward forgiveness. I want you to name this betrayal honestly, in whatever specific detail feels true to your experience. Perhaps it was a spouse who was unfaithful, a friend who spread something private you had trusted them with, a family member who chose their own comfort over your well-being at a critical moment, a colleague who took credit for something that should have been yours, or claimed something entirely false about your character. My beloved child, I do not want you to soften this naming for my sake. I already know the full truth of what happened, and I am not asking you to protect the person who hurt you by minimizing the reality of what they did. I also want to speak to the specific complexity of betrayal that comes from someone you loved deeply, someone whose actions cut more sharply precisely because of how much trust you had placed in them. My beloved child, betrayal from a stranger is painful, but betrayal from someone close to you carries an additional layer of grief, the loss of the relationship you thought you had, alongside the specific harm of whatever they actually did. I want you to grieve both of these losses honestly, the specific action and the larger loss of trust it represents. I want you to know that I am not asking you to move toward forgiveness by first pretending this person's actions were not as serious as they actually were. My beloved child, I want you to hold the full weight of what happened honestly, allowing yourself to feel the complete impact of the betrayal. Before we begin walking together toward what forgiveness might eventually look like for this specific situation. So my beloved child, name this betrayal fully, honestly, without minimizing its weight. I see it clearly, exactly as painful and as significant as it actually was, and I am not rushing you past this honest acknowledgement toward a forgiveness that skips over the real cost of what happened to you. My beloved child, I have named the betrayal fully with you, and now I want to speak to something important. Forgiveness does not require them to apologize. My beloved child, I know part of what has kept you stuck is the belief that genuine forgiveness must be preceded by genuine remorse from the person who hurt you, that you are somehow waiting for permission, an acknowledgement, an apology that validates your pain before you are allowed to release it. I want to release you from this specific expectation today. I want you to consider how much power you are giving to someone who may never actually offer the apology you are waiting for, tying your own healing to a choice that is entirely outside your control, dependent on a change of heart in someone who may not be capable of, or willing to provide, the acknowledgement you deserve. My beloved child, this creates a painful trap, where your freedom remains permanently hostage to another person's willingness to admit wrongdoing, a willingness they may never actually develop. I also want to speak to how forgiveness, unlike reconciliation, is something you are fully capable of extending regardless of the other person's response. My beloved child, reconciliation genuinely does require two willing parties: an offender who acknowledges harm and demonstrates change, and an offended party willing to extend renewed trust. But forgiveness itself, the release of bitterness and the choice to no longer carry the weight of vengeance, is something you can offer entirely on your own, without requiring any specific response from the person who hurt you. I want you to consider what it might feel like to release this person from the burden of your unforgiveness, not because they deserve release, and not because they have earned it through appropriate remorse, but because you deserve the freedom that comes from no longer carrying this weight regardless of whether they ever fully acknowledge what they did. I want you to know that even if this person never apologizes, never acknowledges the harm they caused, never shows any sign of remorse or change, you are still fully capable of forgiving them, releasing the bitterness for your own sake, rather than waiting on a response that may never come. My beloved child, this is not fairness in the way the world typically measures fairness, but it is freedom, real freedom, available to you regardless of what the other person chooses to do or not do in response. So my beloved child, release the expectation that their apology must come first. Forgiveness is something you can offer when you are ready, entirely independent of whether they ever provide the acknowledgement you deserve. This is not letting them off easy. It is setting yourself free, regardless of what they choose to do with the freedom you have extended toward them. My beloved child, I have released you from needing their apology, and now I want to speak to something you deserve to hear clearly. You are allowed to forgive and still grieve. My beloved child, I know a common misunderstanding suggests that once you have forgiven someone, grief over what they did should also disappear, that continued sadness somehow indicates incomplete forgiveness. I want to correct this misunderstanding today. Forgiveness releases the debt. It does not erase the loss, and you are allowed to grieve that loss fully, even after genuine forgiveness has taken place. I want you to consider what was actually lost through this betrayal. Perhaps trust that took years to build, perhaps a version of the relationship you believed you had, perhaps a sense of safety that has not yet fully returned, perhaps time and energy that cannot be recovered. My beloved child, forgiving the person does not undo these losses. It simply means you are releasing your claim to ongoing resentment about them, while the grief over what was genuinely lost remains its own separate, legitimate process. I also want to speak to the specific confusion that arises when grief resurfaces even after you believed forgiveness had already been fully extended, perhaps triggered by an anniversary, a reminder, a similar situation with someone else. My beloved child, this resurfacing grief does not mean your forgiveness was insincere or incomplete. It simply means grief, like forgiveness itself, is not always a single, permanent event. It can return in waves, requiring you to continue extending both grief and forgiveness honestly, even long after you believe the process was finished. I want you to give yourself full permission to feel sad about what happened, even while genuinely having forgiven the person responsible. My beloved child, these two experiences, forgiveness and grief, are not in competition with one another. You can release someone from your bitterness while still honestly mourning everything their actions cost you: the relationship, the trust, the sense of safety, the time you cannot get back. So my beloved child, forgive without requiring yourself to also stop grieving. Both are legitimate. Both deserve their own space in your healing process, and neither one needs to cancel out the other in order for your forgiveness or your grief to be considered genuine and complete. My beloved child, I have given you permission to forgive and still grieve, and now I want to speak to a fear that may be holding you back. The belief that releasing them means releasing justice altogether, that forgiving someone means they simply get away with what they did, with no accountability, no consequence, no reckoning for the harm they caused. My beloved child, I want to correct this fear clearly. Releasing them from your own personal vengeance does not mean releasing justice. It simply means releasing your own claim to administer that justice yourself. I want you to consider the difference between personal vengeance, which I am asking you to release, and genuine justice, which remains fully within my hands and, where appropriate, within the hands of legitimate human systems designed to address wrongdoing. My beloved child, forgiveness does not mean you must abandon appropriate legal action if a crime was committed. It does not mean you cannot pursue appropriate consequences through legitimate channels, whether legal, professional, or relational. It simply means you are releasing your own heart from the burden of personally ensuring that justice is served through ongoing bitterness and resentment. I also want to speak to the specific promise I have made about justice, that I see every wrong committed against you, and that nothing escapes my notice or my eventual reckoning, whether in this life or beyond it. My beloved child, I want you to trust that I am fully capable of ensuring genuine justice is eventually served, more thoroughly and more perfectly than your own attempts at personal vengeance ever could accomplish. Releasing your grip on vengeance does not mean releasing your trust that justice will ultimately be done. It means transferring that responsibility to hands far more capable of executing it perfectly than your own. I want you to release the fear that forgiveness means the person who hurt you simply gets away with it entirely. My beloved child, they do not escape my justice, even if they escape yours. I see everything clearly, and I am fully committed to ensuring that wrongdoing is eventually addressed appropriately, freeing you from the exhausting burden of trying to accomplish this yourself through continued bitterness and resentment. So, my beloved child, release your grip on personal vengeance, trusting that genuine justice remains secure in my hands, executed according to my perfect timing and perfect wisdom, rather than dependent on your own ongoing anger to somehow accomplish what only I am actually capable of fully and rightly administering. My beloved child, I have released you from needing to personally administer justice, and now I want to speak plainly to the cost of unforgiveness, because I do not think you have fully considered how much this ongoing resentment is actually costing you, rather than the person you are resenting. My beloved child, unforgiveness often feels like it is punishing the other person, but in reality, it is primarily punishing you, keeping you tethered to the pain long after the original event, while the person who caused it may have moved on entirely, sometimes without even remembering the incident with the same intensity you continue to carry. I want you to consider the physical and emotional toll unforgiveness has likely taken on you, the tension it creates in your body, the way it colors your mood, the mental energy it consumes even when you are not actively thinking about the specific offense. My beloved child, Chronic bitterness has been shown, again and again, to affect not only emotional well-being but physical health as well, contributing to stress, tension, and a general sense of unease that follows you into situations entirely unrelated to the original wound. I also want to speak to how unforgiveness affects your other relationships, often making it harder to trust people who have given you no reason for suspicion, harder to be fully present and joyful because part of your attention remains consumed by the unresolved offense, harder to receive love fully because some part of your heart remains guarded, protecting itself from a pain that already happened and cannot be prevented by continued vigilance now. I want you to notice how the person who hurt you is likely unaware of or unaffected by the ongoing weight you continue carrying because of what they did. My beloved child, this is one of the most painful truths about unforgiveness. It often costs the offended party far more than it costs the offender, who may be living freely, unaware of or indifferent to the ongoing suffering their actions caused you to continue carrying long after the event itself has passed. So my beloved child, consider honestly what unforgiveness has actually cost you, not simply in relation to the original offender, but in your overall capacity for peace, trust, and joy. I want you to weigh this cost honestly as you consider what forgiveness might offer you instead, not a benefit primarily for the person who hurt you, but a genuine liberation for yourself, released finally from a weight you were never meant to carry indefinitely. My beloved child, I have shown you the true cost of unforgiveness, and now I want to speak to something important about the process itself. Forgiveness is a process, not a single moment. My beloved child, I know you may have been taught that forgiveness should happen instantly, a single decision made once and permanently completed, and if it resurfaces later, something has gone wrong with your original choice to forgive. I want to correct this belief today. Forgiveness is rarely a single, permanent event. It is often a process, revisited many times, especially for significant betrayals that continue to affect your life in ongoing ways. I want you to consider how forgiveness for a deep betrayal often requires multiple layers of releasing, an initial decision to no longer seek vengeance, followed by continued choices, sometimes daily, to release the resentment that naturally resurfaces when memories return, when triggers appear, when the consequences of the original betrayal continue manifesting in your life long after the initial offense occurred. My beloved child, each of these renewed choices to forgive again is not evidence that your original forgiveness failed. It is simply the ongoing nature of forgiveness for genuinely significant wounds. I also want to speak to the specific frustration of feeling like you have already forgiven someone, only to notice fresh anger resurfacing unexpectedly, perhaps triggered by an unrelated situation, a similar betrayal from someone else, or simply an ordinary day when the memory returns with unexpected intensity. My beloved child, this does not mean you have failed at forgiveness. It simply means forgiveness for deep wounds is layered, requiring you to continue choosing release each time the old pain resurfaces, rather than expecting a single decision to permanently resolve every future resurgence of the original hurt. I want you to release the pressure to forgive perfectly, in a single decisive moment, never needing to revisit the choice again. My beloved child, give yourself grace for the ongoing nature of this process, trusting that each time you choose forgiveness anew, even after the resentment has resurfaced, you are continuing genuine, valuable healing work rather than failing at something you thought you had already completed. So my beloved child, trust the process nature of forgiveness. It is not a single event you either accomplish perfectly or fail at entirely. It is an ongoing choice, sometimes requiring daily renewal. And I am patient with however long and however many times this process actually requires for the specific betrayal you are working to forgive. My beloved child, I have shown you that forgiveness is a process. And now I want to speak to something that will help you hold this process wisely. Boundaries and forgiveness coexist. My beloved child, I know part of your resistance to forgiveness comes from a fear that it requires you to remain vulnerable to further harm, reopening yourself fully to someone who has already proven capable of hurting you, without any protection against them doing so again. I want to release you from this fear today. You can forgive someone completely while maintaining firm, healthy boundaries around how much access they have to your life going forward. I want you to consider that forgiveness addresses your internal posture toward the person who hurt you, releasing bitterness and the desire for personal vengeance. Boundaries address something different entirely: the practical structure of the relationship, how much access, trust, and closeness this person is granted moving forward based on their demonstrated trustworthiness and change, or lack thereof. My beloved child, these two things operate on entirely different levels, and confusing them often leads people to believe they must choose between genuine forgiveness and appropriate self-protection, when in reality they can hold both simultaneously. I also want to speak to what these boundaries might practically look like, depending on your specific situation. My beloved child, perhaps forgiveness for you means releasing a parent from your bitterness while still maintaining limited contact, protecting yourself from continued harm. Perhaps it means forgiving a former friend while choosing not to re-enter close relationship with them, releasing the resentment without reopening full access to your life. Perhaps, in situations involving genuine remorse and demonstrated change, it means a gradual, careful rebuilding of trust over time, still requiring wisdom and appropriate pacing rather than instant, unguarded reconciliation. I want you to trust your own discernment about what specific boundaries this particular relationship currently requires, releasing the belief that genuine forgiveness demands unlimited access or immediate full trust restoration. My beloved child, wisdom and forgiveness are not opposites. You can forgive fully while still protecting yourself wisely, and I want you to feel entirely free to do both simultaneously, without guilt, without confusion about whether one somehow cancels out the legitimacy of the other. So my beloved child, hold forgiveness and boundaries together as you move forward. Release the bitterness internally, while externally maintaining whatever level of protection and appropriate distance this specific relationship genuinely requires. Both are legitimate, both honor the reality of what happened, and neither one requires you to sacrifice the other in order to be considered genuine. My beloved child, I have shown you that boundaries and forgiveness coexist, and now I want to speak to something painful: the experience of people around you saying, "Just forgive and move on," too quickly, without honoring the genuine weight of what happened to you. My beloved child, I know how dismissive this kind of pressure can feel, as though your pain is an inconvenience others simply want resolved as quickly as possible, rather than a genuine wound deserving proper time and space to heal. I want you to consider how this kind of premature pressure often comes from people uncomfortable with prolonged pain, wanting resolution more for their own comfort in witnessing your struggle than for your genuine healing. My beloved child, I do not want you to internalize this pressure as an accurate timeline for your own forgiveness process. Genuine forgiveness, especially for significant betrayals, often requires far more time than others' impatience is willing to allow. I also want to speak to the specific spiritual pressure that sometimes accompanies this rush toward premature forgiveness. The implication that your continued struggle somehow indicates spiritual immaturity, insufficient faith, or a failure to trust me adequately. My beloved child, I do not measure your spiritual maturity by how quickly you forgive. I measure it by the honesty and genuine depth of the process you are actually walking through, however long that process legitimately requires. I want you to release the guilt of not forgiving on someone else's timeline, whether that timeline comes from well-meaning but impatient friends, family members eager for the discomfort of conflict to resolve, or religious communities that sometimes prioritize quick resolution over genuine, honest healing. My beloved child, take the time this process actually requires. I am not rushing you, and I do not want you allowing anyone else's discomfort with your pain to accelerate a process that genuinely needs more time. I want you to trust your own pace here, even when it disappoints others who wish you would simply move past this more quickly. My beloved child, genuine forgiveness cannot be rushed without becoming a shallow performance rather than an authentic release. I would rather you take the time this process genuinely requires than force a premature forgiveness that does not actually reflect real healing. So my beloved child, release the pressure from those who want you to forgive and move on faster than this process genuinely allows. Take the time you need. I am patient with you, and I want you to be patient with yourself as well, regardless of how uncomfortable others may be with the pace of your genuine healing. My beloved child, I have released you from the pressure of others' impatient timelines, and now I want to speak to my own example of costly forgiveness, because I do not ask you to walk through anything I have not also walked through myself. My beloved child, I extended forgiveness at the greatest possible personal cost, absorbing the full weight of wrongdoing rather than simply overlooking it or pretending it did not matter. This was not weakness. It was the deepest possible strength, choosing to bear the cost of forgiveness, rather than demand it be paid by those who had actually caused the harm. I want you to consider how differently this example challenges the belief that forgiveness means simply excusing wrongdoing without any cost or consequence. My beloved child, real forgiveness is costly. It requires actually absorbing the weight of what happened rather than pretending it did not hurt, rather than pretending the offense was insignificant. I did not forgive by minimizing wrongdoing. I forgave by fully acknowledging its weight and choosing, at great personal cost, to release it anyway. I also want to speak to the words I spoke in the midst of the greatest betrayal and suffering I experienced, asking for forgiveness on behalf of those causing me harm, recognizing that they did not fully understand the weight of what they were doing. My beloved child, I want you to consider this posture as you approach your own forgiveness process, not requiring the other person to fully understand or acknowledge the weight of their actions before you extend release, but choosing forgiveness even in the midst of their continued lack of awareness or remorse. I want you to know that I understand the cost of forgiveness intimately, not as an abstract concept I am asking you to embrace without having walked through it myself, but as something I have personally experienced at the deepest possible level. My beloved child, when you find this process difficult, remember that I am not asking you to do something I have not already done myself, at a cost far greater than anything you are being asked to bear. So my beloved child, let my own example strengthen you as you continue this process. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is costly, strong, and deeply meaningful, exactly the kind of forgiveness I modeled for you personally, and exactly the kind of forgiveness I am inviting you into now, at whatever pace and however many layers this specific process genuinely requires. My beloved child, I have shown you my own example of costly forgiveness, and now I want to speak to something equally important: forgiving yourself. My beloved child, I know part of what you carry is not only anger toward the person who hurt you, but also anger toward yourself, for trusting them in the first place, for staying longer than you should have, for missing warning signs you now see clearly in hindsight, for the choices you made in response to their betrayal that you now regret. I want to speak to this self-directed pain today as well. I want you to consider how unfair it is to judge your past self with the clarity and information you only gained after the betrayal occurred. My beloved child, you trusted based on what you knew at the time, not based on the full picture that only became visible after the harm was done. Judging your past decisions with present knowledge is not fair evaluation. It is hindsight bias, applying information you simply did not have access to when you were actually making those earlier choices. I also want to speak to the specific shame of feeling like your own reactions to the betrayal, the anger, the mistakes made while processing genuine pain somehow compound your guilt rather than being understood as normal responses to genuinely difficult circumstances. My beloved child, you are allowed to have responded imperfectly to an imperfect, painful situation. I do not hold your human, understandable reactions against you, and I do not want you continuing to hold them against yourself either. I want you to release the self-blame you have been carrying alongside your anger toward the person who hurt you. My beloved child, forgiving yourself does not mean pretending you made no mistakes. It simply means extending to yourself the same grace, the same release from ongoing judgment, that I am inviting you to extend toward the person who wronged you. You deserve this grace as much as anyone else does, and I want you to receive it fully today. So my beloved child, forgive yourself alongside forgiving the person who hurt you. Release the self-blame, the hindsight judgment, the shame over how you responded to genuine pain. You did the best you could with what you knew and what you had at the time, and I am not holding your imperfect responses against you. I want you to stop holding them against yourself as well. My beloved child, I have invited you to forgive yourself. And now I want to speak to the freedom waiting for you on the other side of this entire process, because I do not want you to walk through everything this letter has spoken, without also seeing clearly what awaits you once genuine forgiveness has taken deeper root. My beloved child, on the other side of this release is a lightness you may have forgotten was even possible. A freedom to think about your past without the immediate flood of anger. A capacity to trust new people without the shadow of the old betrayal automatically coloring every new relationship. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to think about this person, or this event, without your chest tightening, without the same surge of resentment rising automatically. My beloved child, this is not a permanently unreachable fantasy. It is genuinely available to you through the process this entire letter has described, however long it takes, however many layers it requires. I want you to hold on to this vision of freedom as motivation for continuing this difficult work, even on the days it feels nearly impossible. I also want to speak to how this freedom extends beyond simply your relationship with the specific person who hurt you, restoring your capacity for joy, for trust, for full presence in your other relationships that may have been quietly affected by the unresolved bitterness you have been carrying. My beloved child, forgiveness does not only heal your relationship with the past, it restores your capacity to be fully present in your current life, unburdened by the weight this bitterness has placed on everything else. I want you to trust that this freedom is worth the difficulty of the process required to reach it. My beloved child, I know forgiveness is hard work. Sometimes the hardest work you will ever do, but I promise you, the freedom waiting on the other side is genuinely worth every difficult step this process requires. And I am walking with you through every single one of those steps, patiently, faithfully, for as long as this journey actually takes. My beloved child, I have walked with you through this entire letter, showing you that forgiveness is strength rather than weakness, that it does not require excusing, forgetting, or automatic reconciliation, that the bitterness you have carried has cost you dearly, that naming the betrayal honestly matters, that forgiveness does not require their apology, that you are allowed to forgive and still grieve, that releasing them does not mean releasing justice, that unforgiveness costs you far more than it costs them, that forgiveness is a process rather than a single moment, that boundaries and forgiveness coexist beautifully, that premature pressure from others does not have to dictate your timeline, that I understand the cost of forgiveness personally, that forgiving yourself matters as much as forgiving them, and that genuine freedom waits for you on the other side of this entire process. My beloved child, now I want to speak one final word over you as this letter comes to its close. You are not weak for choosing to forgive. You are choosing the harder, stronger, more freeing path, releasing what was never meant to be carried indefinitely, trusting me with the justice you cannot fully administer yourself, and reclaiming the peace, joy, and trust that bitterness has been quietly stealing from you for far too long. Walk forward today, at whatever pace this process genuinely requires, trusting that I am with you through every layer of this difficult, worthwhile work. I love you, my beloved child, in your anger and in your eventual release, in your grief and in your growing freedom, and I am not finished walking this road with you until it is fully, completely, faithfully complete. My beloved child, before this letter closes, I want to speak to something many of you are quietly wrestling with. The fear that forgiving someone means opening yourself back up to being hurt by them again. My beloved child, I want to address this fear directly, because I do not want the fear of repeated harm to keep you permanently trapped in bitterness, nor do I want you to mistake forgiveness for an obligation to remain vulnerable to ongoing mistreatment. I want you to consider that forgiveness and vulnerability are not the same thing. My beloved child, you can release someone from your bitterness while remaining fully alert and wise about their demonstrated patterns of behavior, protecting yourself accordingly. Forgiving someone does not require you to assume they have changed, nor does it require you to grant them the same level of access and trust they had before the harm occurred. You are allowed to forgive with your eyes wide open, informed by everything you now know about how this person has behaved in the past. I also want to speak to the specific situation of repeated offenses. Someone who has hurt you more than once, who continues the same pattern despite previous conversations, previous forgiveness, previous attempts at reconciliation. My beloved child, I want you to know that forgiveness does not require you to remain in a repeated cycle of harm, extending endless chances without any accompanying change in behavior. You can forgive the past harm fully while also recognizing honestly that continued relationship with this person may require significant distance, firm boundaries, or in some cases, complete separation, in order to protect yourself from an established pattern that shows no sign of changing. I want you to release the guilt that sometimes accompanies this kind of protective distance. The belief that a truly forgiving person would keep extending access regardless of repeated harm. My beloved child, wisdom is not the opposite of forgiveness. You can release someone completely from your bitterness while still wisely limiting how much of your life you allow them to continue affecting, especially when their pattern of behavior has shown no genuine change over time. So my beloved child, forgive fully and protect yourself wisely. These two things are not in conflict. I am not asking you to remain exposed to repeated harm in the name of demonstrating forgiveness. I am simply asking you to release the bitterness while making wise, discerning choices about what role, if any, this person continues to play in your life moving forward. My beloved child, I have addressed the fear of repeated harm, and now I want to speak to something practical. The specific difficulty of family gatherings, holidays, and shared spaces where you are still required to encounter the person who hurt you, even while this forgiveness process remains ongoing. My beloved child, I know these encounters can feel like a minefield, forcing you to navigate polite conversation, forced proximity, and the performance of normalcy, all while your heart is still working through genuine, unresolved pain underneath the surface. I want you to give yourself permission to set realistic expectations for these encounters, rather than assuming you must either fully engage as though nothing happened or completely avoid the gathering altogether. My beloved child, there is a middle ground available to you: brief, polite engagement without requiring deep emotional connection, physical presence at a gathering without requiring extended, vulnerable conversation, boundaries around specific topics or specific amounts of time spent in this person's direct company. I also want to speak to the exhaustion of managing other family members' expectations during these encounters, the pressure to pretend everything is fine for the sake of preserving peace at the gathering, the discomfort of others who may not fully understand or acknowledge what actually happened between you and this specific person. My beloved child, you are not required to perform a resolution you have not actually reached, simply to make a family gathering more comfortable for everyone else present. I want you to prepare practically for these encounters, deciding in advance how much engagement feels manageable, identifying an exit strategy if the situation becomes overwhelming, perhaps even bringing a trusted person along who understands your situation and can offer support throughout the gathering. My beloved child, this kind of preparation is not weakness, it is wisdom, protecting your own peace while still navigating the complicated reality of shared family spaces. I want you to know that I am present with you in these difficult encounters, giving you strength to navigate them with grace, without requiring you to pretend more resolution has occurred than genuinely has. My beloved child, take these encounters one at a time, at whatever pace and with whatever boundaries feel necessary, trusting that navigating them wisely is part of the same forgiveness journey this entire letter has been describing. So my beloved child, prepare wisely for these difficult shared spaces, extending yourself grace for however challenging they continue to feel, and trusting that I am present with you in every uncomfortable interaction. This ongoing forgiveness process still requires you to navigate. My beloved child, I have offered you practical wisdom for navigating shared family spaces, and now I want to speak to the role of prayer in this forgiveness process, because I want you to have a concrete practice to lean on during the moments this process feels most difficult. My beloved child, I want to invite you into a specific kind of prayer, one that does not require you to feel forgiveness fully before you can honestly pray about it, but instead invites you to bring your genuine, unresolved feelings honestly before me as part of the process itself. I want you to consider praying honestly about your anger, your bitterness, your struggle to release this person, rather than praying a polished, premature prayer that pretends you have already arrived at full forgiveness when you have not. My beloved child, I would rather receive your honest struggle than a performed resolution that does not reflect where you actually are in this process. Tell me plainly that you are still angry. Tell me plainly that forgiveness feels impossible some days. This honesty is not a failure of your prayer life. It is the beginning of genuine, authentic progress. I also want to speak to the practice of praying blessing over the person who hurt you, not because they deserve it, and not because you feel like offering it, but as a discipline that gradually softens the grip bitterness holds over your own heart. My beloved child, this is not easy, and I do not expect you to feel genuine warmth toward this person simply because you have prayed for them. But the practice itself, choosing to pray blessing rather than continuing to rehearse curses and resentment, gradually reshapes your own heart over time, even before your feelings have fully caught up with the practice. I want you to bring this process to me regularly, not as a one-time prayer meant to instantly resolve everything, but as an ongoing conversation. Revisit it as often as the bitterness resurfaces, as often as new layers of hurt become apparent, as often as you need reminding that I am walking with you through this entire difficult journey. So, my beloved child, let prayer become a genuine part of this forgiveness process, honest about your struggle, practiced in blessing even when it does not yet feel natural, and repeat it as often as this ongoing journey requires. I am listening every single time you bring this process before me, patient with wherever you currently stand within it. My beloved child, I have invited you into honest prayer throughout this process. And now I want to speak to what happens when the anger returns unexpectedly, even after you believed you had made genuine progress, my beloved child. This will likely happen. A sudden reminder, a similar situation with someone else, a comment that reopens the wound you thought had already closed. And suddenly the anger feels just as fresh and just as overwhelming as it did in the earliest days after the betrayal first occurred. I want you to understand that this resurgence does not erase the progress you have already made. My beloved child, healing is rarely a straight line, and a sudden wave of anger does not mean you are back at square one. It simply means this particular wound was significant enough to require ongoing attention, even after considerable healing has already taken place. I do not want you to interpret this resurgence as failure. I want you to interpret it as a normal part of processing something genuinely painful. I also want to speak to what it looks like to respond wisely when this anger resurfaces unexpectedly. My beloved child, rather than judging yourself harshly for feeling angry again, I want you to simply acknowledge it honestly, bringing it back to me the same way you did in the earlier stages of this process. Notice what triggered it. Feel it fully, rather than suppressing it out of frustration that it returned at all. And then, when you are ready, choose again to release it, trusting that this renewed choice is not evidence of failure but simply further evidence of ongoing, genuine healing work. I want you to give yourself grace for how long this process continues, requiring renewed attention. My beloved child, some wounds resurface for years, in smaller and smaller waves over time, gradually losing their intensity with each renewed release, even though they may never fully disappear completely. This gradual lessening, rather than complete elimination, is often what genuine healing from significant betrayal actually looks like. And I do not want you comparing your experience to an unrealistic expectation of total, permanent resolution that many genuine healing processes simply do not follow. So, my beloved child, when the anger returns unexpectedly, meet it with the same grace and honesty you have practiced throughout this entire letter. It does not undo your progress. It simply invites you into one more round of the same faithful process, releasing again, trusting again, choosing forgiveness again, exactly as many times as this specific wound genuinely requires. My beloved child, I have shown you how to meet the resurfacing anger with grace, and now I want to speak to the importance of community support throughout this forgiveness process, because I do not want you attempting this difficult work in complete isolation. My beloved child, healing from betrayal, and the long process of genuine forgiveness that follows it, is rarely accomplished well without the support of trusted people who can walk alongside you, offering perspective, comfort, and accountability throughout the journey. I want you to consider who in your life is capable of holding this process with you honestly, without rushing you toward premature resolution, without taking sides in a way that deepens bitterness rather than supporting genuine healing, without minimizing what happens simply to keep the peace. My beloved child, these are the people I want you to lean on during this process. Even if that circle is small, even if it consists of only a counselor, a close friend, or a small trusted group who understands the genuine complexity of what you are working through. I also want to speak to the specific value of processing this out loud with someone else, rather than only working through it internally. My beloved child, speaking your experience honestly to a trusted listener often reveals insights, patterns, and progress that remain invisible when this work happens only in the privacy of your own mind. Community does not replace the work you must do personally and with me, but it significantly supports and strengthens that work, offering companionship through a process that can otherwise feel profoundly lonely. I want you to release any shame about needing this kind of support. The belief that a truly strong or faithful person should be able to process betrayal and forgiveness entirely alone, without needing anyone else's help. My beloved child, I designed you for both dependence on me and genuine human connection. And seeking support during this difficult process is wisdom, not weakness. So my beloved child, seek out the community available to you as you continue this forgiveness journey. Let trusted people walk alongside you, offering support, perspective, and companionship throughout a process that was never meant to be carried entirely in isolation. My beloved child, I have invited you into community throughout this process, and now I want to speak to something you may not have considered: the way genuine forgiveness eventually becomes a gift you offer to others walking through their own betrayal. My beloved child, I do not want the pain you have experienced to simply end with your own healing, valuable and complete as that healing is on its own. I want to eventually use what you have learned through this difficult process to offer genuine comfort and wisdom to someone else facing a similar struggle. I want you to consider how uniquely qualified you will eventually become to sit with someone else in the earliest, rawest stages of their own betrayal, having walked this exact road yourself, understanding intimately the specific temptations, the specific exhaustion, the specific confusion that accompanies genuine forgiveness work. My beloved child, this is one of the ways I redeem genuine pain, not by pretending it did not happen, but by using the hard-won wisdom it produced in you to become a source of genuine help for someone else who needs exactly what you now have to offer. I also want to speak to how this future ministry does not require you to have arrived at perfect, complete healing before you are qualified to help someone else. My beloved child, sometimes the most helpful companions for people in early grief or early betrayal are not those who have achieved flawless resolution, but those who are honestly further along the same road, able to say authentically, "I understand, I have walked this too," and healing, however slow and difficult, is genuinely possible. I want you to hold this future possibility gently, not as pressure to rush your own healing in order to become useful to others more quickly, but simply as an encouraging reminder that this pain, redeemed over time, will not be wasted. My beloved child, what you are walking through now is preparing you, whether or not you can currently see how, for a specific kind of compassion and usefulness that easier, untested seasons could never have produced. So, my beloved child, trust that this difficult forgiveness journey is not simply for your own healing alone, valuable as that is. It is also preparing you, slowly and faithfully, to become a genuine source of comfort and wisdom for someone else who will one day need exactly the kind of understanding only your own experience could have produced. My beloved child, I have shown you how this pain will eventually be redeemed to help others. And now I want to speak to one final, practical reminder before we move toward the true close of this letter: the importance of celebrating even small progress along this forgiveness journey. My beloved child, I know it is tempting to measure your progress only by the final destination, complete, effortless peace toward the person who hurt you, and to dismiss every smaller step along the way as insufficient until that final destination has been fully reached. I want you to notice the small victories instead. The day you thought of this person without the same sharp surge of anger. The moment you chose not to say something bitter that you might have said before. The time you prayed for them honestly, even through gritted teeth, even without fully meaning it yet. My beloved child, these small moments matter. They are not insignificant footnotes on the way to some larger accomplishment. They are the actual substance of genuine healing, built one small, faithful choice at a time. I also want to speak to the discouragement that arises when progress feels painfully slow, when you compare your current state to where you hope to be by now, wondering if you will ever actually reach full forgiveness. My beloved child, I do not want you measuring your worth or your spiritual maturity by how quickly this process unfolds. I want you to trust the trajectory, even when the pace feels frustratingly slow, recognizing that consistent small steps forward, even imperfect ones, are genuinely moving you toward the freedom this entire letter has been describing. I want you to practice naming your own progress honestly, out loud if it helps, acknowledging the small ways this process is genuinely working in you, even on the days it does not feel like enough. My beloved child, I am celebrating every one of these small steps alongside you, even the ones too small for anyone else to notice, even the ones you have not yet learned to fully credit yourself for. So my beloved child, celebrate the small progress. It is not small in my eyes. Every moment you choose release over resentment, every prayer offered honestly even through difficulty, every small victory over the old bitterness, all of it matters deeply. Building steadily toward the fuller freedom this entire journey is leading you toward. My beloved child, as this letter truly comes to its close now, I want to leave you with one final image to carry forward. Picture the weight you have been carrying, the bitterness, the resentment, the constant replaying of what happened, as an actual physical burden strapped tightly across your shoulders. One you have carried for so long, you have nearly forgotten what it feels like to walk without it. My beloved child, I am not asking you to pretend this burden was never real or never heavy. I am simply inviting you gently, one strap at a time, to begin setting it down, trusting that I am fully capable of holding what you release, far more capable than you were ever meant to be of carrying it alone. I want you to imagine what it might feel like, even briefly, to walk without this weight, shoulders lighter, breath easier, attention finally free to notice the good things around you that this burden has been quietly obscuring for so long. My beloved child, this lightness is not a fantasy reserved for people who have never been genuinely betrayed. It is available to you through the very process this entire letter has described, however long it takes, however many layers it requires. I want you to trust that setting this burden down does not mean the betrayal did not happen, does not mean it did not matter, does not mean you are somehow declaring peace with everything that occurred. It simply means you are finally allowing yourself the freedom that carrying this weight indefinitely was never actually providing you in the first place. My beloved child, I want to leave you with one final thought before you return to your day. If today has stirred up more anger, more grief, more resistance to this entire process than you expected, I want you to be gentle with yourself in whatever comes next. You do not have to resolve everything this letter has addressed in a single reading. This is the beginning of an ongoing conversation between us, one I want you to return to as often as you need, whenever the old bitterness resurfaces, whenever forgiveness feels impossible again, whenever you need reminding that this process, however slow, however difficult, is genuinely leading you toward real freedom. I want you to carry a simple phrase with you from this letter, something you can return to on the harder days ahead. I am releasing this weight. I am choosing freedom. My beloved child, let this phrase interrupt the old bitterness when it resurfaces, reminding you gently of everything this letter has spoken over you today. And when you are ready to go deeper still, I will be here, patient and present, ready to continue this healing work for as long as it takes. My beloved child, take one final breath before you close this letter completely. Let it be slow. Let it be deep. Let it settle into the places that have been holding tension for far longer than you realized. Whatever you carried into this letter today, the anger at what happened, the exhaustion of carrying it for so long, the fear that releasing it somehow means losing something important, I want you to release just a portion of that weight now, trusting that it rests safely in my hands. You are not walking through this forgiveness journey alone. You never have been. I have been here the entire time, and I will remain here, steady and present, for as long as this healing continues to unfold. I love you, my beloved child, in your anger and in your eventual peace, in your grief and in your growing freedom, in every layer of this difficult, worthwhile process. Go now, gently, into whatever this day still holds, carrying with you the truth that forgiveness has never made you weak. It is making you free, one honest, courageous choice at a time. And I am walking every single step of this road with you, patiently, faithfully, until it is finally, completely done. My beloved child, one more thought before you go. There will come a day, further along than you can currently see, when you look back at this exact season, the anger you are carrying right now, the exhaustion of this ongoing process, and you will recognize how far you have actually traveled. My beloved child, healing rarely announces itself in a single dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, gradually, until one day you notice that the memory which once brought instant, overwhelming pain now brings only a quiet ache, manageable, distant, no longer controlling the whole of your emotional life the way it once did. I want you to trust that this day is coming, even though it may still feel impossibly far away from where you currently stand. My beloved child, every small choice toward forgiveness you have made throughout this process, every honest prayer, every moment you chose release over resentment, has been building steadily toward that eventual day. Even during the seasons it felt like nothing was changing at all. So, my beloved child, keep walking this road, however slowly it currently feels. The freedom waiting for you is real, and it is closer than you think. Built patiently through every faithful, courageous choice you continue making, one difficult day at a time. My beloved child, I want to speak once more to the specific courage this entire journey has required of you, because I do not want you to underestimate what you have already accomplished simply by staying honest throughout this difficult process. My beloved child, many people never even begin this work, choosing instead to bury their pain permanently, allowing bitterness to quietly shape the rest of their lives without ever confronting it directly. You have chosen differently. You have chosen to look honestly at what happened, to feel the full weight of it, and to keep moving, however slowly, toward genuine release. This choice alone, made repeatedly throughout this process, reflects real courage. Courage I see clearly even on the days you feel like you are failing at this entirely. I want you to remember this courage the next time doubt whispers that you are not making enough progress, that you should already be further along than you currently are. My beloved child, you are exactly where this process requires you to be right now, doing genuinely difficult, genuinely brave work, even when it does not feel that way from the inside. I am proud of you for staying in this process rather than avoiding it entirely, and I want you to be proud of yourself as well, for the courage this ongoing forgiveness journey has required and continues to require of you every single day. My beloved child, close your eyes for just a moment before you go. Feel the weight you have carried, and let it settle, even just slightly, into the knowledge that it is not required of you forever. Someone is walking this road with you, fully aware of everything it has cost you, fully committed to seeing this process through to genuine completion. That someone is me, and I am not finished walking with you yet. There is more freedom still ahead, and I will be present for every remaining step of the journey, exactly as I have been present for every step already taken. My beloved child, go now, gently, into whatever this day still holds. Carry with you the truth that has anchored this entire letter, that forgiveness. Real forgiveness was never a sign of weakness or surrender. It has always been one of the strongest, bravest choices a heart can make, and every step you take toward it, however small, however slow, is building something genuinely lasting. A freedom that bitterness could never have given you, a peace that vengeance was never actually capable of providing. Rest now, my beloved child. You are safe, you are seen, you are loved, fully and completely, exactly as you are, exactly in the middle of this process. However unfinished it still remains today. And when the day finally comes, whenever it arrives, when you notice that the weight has genuinely lifted, that the memory has lost its grip, that you can think of this person and this event without the same overwhelming flood of pain, remember to come back and tell me about it. Not because I will not already know, but because that moment together, celebrating the freedom we walked towards side by side, is part of what this entire forgiveness journey was always building toward in the first place. I look forward to that day with you, my beloved child. Even now, even in the middle of the process that still continues today, I love you, my beloved child, completely, unconditionally, in the anger and in the peace, in the struggle and in the freedom still ahead. Rest now. I have you. I always have, and I always will, until this journey toward genuine forgiveness is finally, fully, faithfully complete. Walk forward today, lighter than you were yesterday, trusting that every step of this road, however slow, is leading you somewhere genuinely good.